Welcome, everyone. Here we are at RightsCon, starting our panel, Digital Solutions to Respond to Gender-Based Violence. And we will share today the experience from the pandemic in Brazil. I'm Roberta Salomone, journalist and gender researcher. I'm here with our panelists to talk about how the confinement was a perfect storm for violent behavior behind closed doors. So we know that more than 240 million of women and girls between 15 and 49 years old have faced sexual or physical violence by an intimate partner over the past year. And during COVID-19 pandemic, many countries have reported an increase in gender-based violence. So we are here at RightsCon with an audience from around the globe, and we invite which and every one of you to participate and to send questions, which will be answered at the end. So I want to say welcome to Paula Tavares, our first speaker. Paula is a senior legal and gender specialist at the World Bank with over 15 years of experience in international development and comparative analysis focus on gender equality, women's economic inclusion, and private sector development. So Paula, welcome. Let me ask you, what have we seen in terms of the global increase in domestic violence case during the pandemic?
Thank you, Roberta, and thank you for the invitation to be here with this panel. Such an important topic right now. Thank you for the introduction. So I'll start by saying that something that I think we all know, that violence against women and girls is pervasive and is considered a pandemic was already during normal times. It's a product of unequal gender power relations and discrimination against women. But with COVID, with the pandemic, and the emerging evidence that we have from the crisis now, but also from past epidemics, we see that risks are being exacerbated and that cases and violence is increasing. There are many factors: increased economic stress because of economic losses for women, families, the economy, anxiety for people because of the epidemic, the fear of contagion in general, just the stress socially, but also social isolation and the mandatory confinement measures that have been adopted throughout the globe as a necessary measure to contain the health crisis, but which has had impacts also on violence against women. Women are oftentimes at home, staying home, many times with potential abusers, with their children. They're more exposed to violence. On the other hand, many times access to health, security, justice sector services are limited. This is for many reasons. Sometimes deprioritization of funding, facilities are closed, restrictions on mobility, on public mobility and on women's mobility. And what we've seen is the data showing an increase in fact, both in the world and in Brazil in the first months. An example, in France, we had cases of domestic violence increase by 30% since the beginning of the quarantine measures in mid-March. Hotlines, calls for violence against women around the world have increased by at least 30% in many, many countries. We've seen this in Europe, throughout South Asia, in Brazil, everywhere. In Brazil specifically, we know that even before COVID, even before the pandemic, more than 500 women experience some form of violence every single hour, and at least one woman is murdered every 2 hours. Most of this is unreported. And during COVID, the data that's emerged shows that cases of femicide, that's the homicide of women because of their gender, increased 22% in March and April of 2020 as compared to the same period of last year. And the nationwide phone line maintained also had an increase in 36% in April alone. On the other hand, police complaints, for example, and protection orders suggesting have fallen dramatically, suggesting that women are indeed having difficulty accessing these services. And so one of the measures that we've seen that's been adopted in many places has been virtual services adopted. In Brazil, for example, with online filing of cases, but also other interventions. And I think that's what we'll be talking about here and how important that's been. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. We know how important are all these solutions and ideas when you talk about gender-based violence, right? So thank you for your speech, for all information. And now I will turn to our next speaker, Anne Williams. Anne is a lawyer and founder of the Justiceiras, a network that has more than 1,000 volunteers from all over Brazil, and that was born with the pandemic. So Anne, welcome. I want to ask you, could you discuss what happened at the beginning of the pandemic in Brazil and the reasons why you created the Justiceiras initiative?
Of course, Roberta, thank you so much for this invitation. And thank you. It's a pleasure to share this moment, share this important moment for me with you, Renata, Viviana, Paula, you, Roberta. So, my name is Annie Willians. I'm a lawyer and a business administrator. And 3 years ago, I founded an institute, Nelson Williams Institute. And until now, we work in educational area and law area. We work in 9 states, in 20 cities, and we can work directly with 10,000 people. But in the beginning of this quarantine, the Nelson Williams Institute was invited to Gabriela Prado Mansur, the prosecutor, to start with a new project. And this project is Justiceiras. Justiceiras is an important platform to gender-based violence against women. And our challenge was how work with this in this quarantine moment. So in the beginning of this quarantine, saw the Paula numbers, we started with this platform. We decided to work with by remote way. In Brazil, almost of women, almost of the population use the WhatsApp app. So we decided to work with WhatsApp. And we decided to work to 5 pillars in this program. So we have in Justiceiras, law orientation, social assistance, psychology assistance. We have healthcare by telemedicine, and we have emotional support by volunteers that happen by other women that suffer violence before, or women that understood the importance to face the gender-based violence women. And when we decided to work with these pillars, we decided to invite them, these volunteers, for our team. And we shared this invited by Instagram. In the first week, Roberta, we had 3,000 volunteers. Now, 4 weeks later, 4 weeks after, we have 3,003. I'm so sorry. In the first week, we had 300. Now we have 3,500 volunteers. I'm sorry. I'm nervous with these numbers. And we have a lot of women with this purpose of life, but that need help because they have never, some of them have never worked with this before, have never worked with violence before. So, Justiceiras identify leaders, technical national leaders, to help them, to help these volunteers, to help them, to give for them tools to assistance. So, how the work happened? The victims that needs our help fills out documents by Google Form documents, and these forms will be read by our team, and our team will send to 4 volunteers in the same time. Law area, social assistance, psychology assistance, and emotional support. And when they need, healthcare too. But when these victims look at for us, she have this assistance, this support by WhatsApp. It's a simple way, a simple solution. In this quarantine moment, most of them couldn't leave the home. So this is a problem, a big problem. This is our problem. Just to say one number, in Justiceiras, 8 out of 10 victims is marriage with aggressor. And it's our numbers in Justiceiras. And 76% suffered violence in the house. So it's an important number to see. And until now, Justiceiras could help 1,400 lives, 1,400 new opportunities of lives. So it's more than numbers. It's a real opportunity. So Justiceiras have this deal with this community. Thank you, Roberta.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Thanks a lot. It's amazing how Justiceiras have helped so many women in Brazil in like 4 months, right?
It's crazy because it's just 4 months.
Yeah. So, and thank you so much. And I invite again the audience to send questions that will be answered at the end. You guys can use the chat box, right or left. Okay. And now it's Renata Albertin time. Renata is a executive director of Mete, Colher, a startup created 4 years ago that uses technology to support women who are experiencing abuse relationships. Hello, Renata.
Welcome. Hello, Roberta. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, we can continue.
Okay. I have a question for you. How can such online tools help these women. In particular, what has been the experience during the pandemic? Sorry.
Okay, thank you again for the invitation. And I would like to say hello to everyone here online. I'm very grateful to be here, such an important panel as this one. And I will introduce myself a little bit. I'm Renata Albertin, CEO and co-founder of Mete, a startup that aims to create technology to combat violence against the women. Actually, our focus is on domestic violence. We have been acting and offer support of Brazilian women since 2016 and help them to break the abusive cycle with their partners in their houses. I think important to say for the people understand the name Mete Colher comes from a popular saying in Brazil that goes almost like this. In fights between husband and wife, no one should get involved. No one should put the spoon. If I speak in Spanish, I hear something once that is almost like meter la cuchara. I don't know because I don't speak Spanish, but I agree in the person that told me this. Viviana is say right and okay, I believe, I agree. And meter la cuchara is the expression of meter colher or the put the spoon. And here we do put the spoon. Through online platforms, we support and provide some important orientation and information for women to leave the abusive relationship, the abusive cycle, because we know that it's really difficult for women get out of the abusive relationship when she is alone. It's more difficult when she has some support, someone to help. It's easier, it's a little bit more easier. In 2017, we launched an application aiming to connect women in need of help to other women who want to help as a volunteer. And we matched these women to support each other. Almost similar the Justiceiras, to connect volunteers with the women that are experience violence. And we have in almost a little bit more than 2 years, we have connected more than 14,000 women all over Brazil, Brazilian women actually, and have been helping more than 4,000 women. That's me. In other words, is women who report some or ask for help, they receive the answer. And in January, the support for help is about emotional support or legal advice. But sadly and unfortunately, our application, our app is no longer available anymore because, as Paula said, don't have too much investment to support this kind of program. And sometimes it's so difficult you maintain one online platform because technology is really expensive. For us Brazilians, is more than expensive if we realize that everything what we pay to have one platform online is, okay, we have some free, but if not, we have to pay in dollar. The dollar for us now is really, really high. But we continue to offer support for women through our social network as Facebook, Instagram, and email. During this pandemic, we work like this, answer all these questions, asking for help through this online platform. And I truly believe in the power of online technology. I think it is a big tools that we have to work more with them because these tools such as app or messages, social network, greatly contribute to widen the possibilities of access to women victims of domestic violence in need of help. Here in Brazil, for example, the support centers or shelters, houses, which only work offline, woke up during the pandemic to how important it is to offer the possibility of support, of online support. And some of them as support centers and some policy departments, I started to operate more intensively through WhatsApp chat, for example, because in Brazil, WhatsApp is a huge phenomenon. Everybody who has access to internet have the platform. Online tools, either the existing one or creating new ones, are important to amplify the possibility of women who experience violence and have to access a quality information that, for me, I think is fundamental to break the abusive cycle. I used to say that information is the first step for women to feel strong, because one women who are experiencing domestic violence, we need to show them the correct way to end. I think information is the first step to she start her path, because this path is so difficult, is not easy. But when she knows about the law, when she knows about her rights, that we get these rights with, working a lot to have, for example, the Maria da Penha's law. And when she knows about it, she feels more strong, to continue and finally get out of this abusive relationship. And to finish, I even dare to say that it is extremely necessary to fit them, the online technology platform tools, as a part of public policies, because in Brazil it's not too much. It's not into the public policy, and I think we need to work more because just the online technologies will not solve everything, but we need to think how it will be part of the solution. Okay, thank you, and we will talk more.
Thank you so much, Renata. You are right. Information is powerful. It's a powerful tool for women everywhere and always. So now I will turn to our next speaker, Viviana Santiago. Viviana is a gender and political advocacy manager from Plan International Brazil. And we know that while online tools can provide support to women, on the flip side is the online violence against women and girls, right? So Viviana, welcome. I have a question for you. What are some of the issues around this, and why should we take them seriously during and beyond COVID-19?
Hi, Roberta. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and with our friends. I think we are really a powerful team, and it's a pleasure to be here and talk about gender, about women, about girls. And we need to talk about violence too, and we need to talk about how it increased in this pandemic context. So I am Viviana Santiago, as you said, and I would like to share a little bit of my background with everybody here joining us today. I am a gender and advocacy manager in Plan International Brazil, as you said, and also a social justice advocate and an activist with the Black women movement here in Brazil. So I need to tell you my background because I need to make visible that I'm talking about violence and gender issues and pandemic And I'm talking about this person who works with a social organization, but also like a feminist, also like a Black women movement here in Brazil. So let's talk about online safety, security, and we need to talk about online violence too. Very often we imagine internet like a magical place, and we totally forget that it's still a place populated by humans, and the same humans that created violent relationships with women and girls in our world with face-to-face interactions. Those same human beings are creating the rules of this digital world, rules that reproduce, recreate, and normalize the violence against women and girls. And I think it's an important point that we need to put on the table, that internet is a space that recreate violence, that normalize violence. Because here in Brazil, one between 3 or 5 women faced violence online. And it's totally normalized in our society because people have this idea that, oh, please take care online. Think before to post because you can't control what will happen if you post something. And it's wrong because it's the idea that that space is a completely violent space for women and girls. And we need to think that in Brazil, 70% of the victims of sexting, for example, and of the revealing of intimate pictures of nudity or of sexual content were women. 70%. Women are also the majority of the victims of cyberbullying, including harassment and insults. And it's totally normalized here in Brazil. 4 out of 10 children and teenagers with ages between 9 and 16 years have witnessed discrimination online. 60% of them were acts of racial discrimination. And if we are talking this year, George Floyd years, it's impossible to have in our mind the idea that 60% of our children are have witnessing discrimination online, are seeing totally the situation about racial discrimination in our country, but also in our world. And in 50% of this case, people were being discriminated because of their sexual orientation. It's really terrible to imagine that our children and teenagers are really living and interacting in this space, a space in that 15 of them are being discriminated because of their sexual orientation. Between 2015 and 2017, more than 220 women here in Brazil and girls, women and girls, more than 220 women and girls here in Brazil have died by suicide as a result of the exposure, leaking of revealing or intimating pictures on internet. I will repeat, more than 220 women and girls have died by suicide as a result of the exposure or revealing or intimate pictures on internet. A 2019 study on the leaking of intimate images online concluded last year that more than 70% of girls ages between 13 to 18 have received nudes without having asked for it. 80% of them have been asked to send nudes, and 20% of them have already sent nudes. It's a little bit about the social interactions that we have in internet. And it's not about to find guilty, but it's to express that girls are living their sexuality online, okay, but also they are facing the same problems that we are facing offline. For example, when we are trying to live our sexual and reproductive rights, and then we suffer violence. Regarding of this leaking of the pictures, we are not talking about what kind of help these girls are receiving. Regarding the leaking of the pictures, in 13% of the case, the victims have not told anyone. 18% struggle feeling guilty as if it was their fault, and 27% considering take their lives in response to that. It's seriously, we need to think more. We need to address the violence online. And I'm talking about girls because girls will face more difficult to leave this situation because they are girls and their voice are not heard in our society. As adult persons, we need to fight with girls. We need to make visible this problem, this violence on the internet. And we need to find solutions because I can't believe that internet will be always this terrible space for us, like girls and women.
Well, thank you again, Viviana. We have so many challenges ahead, right? So I invite again the audience to send questions that will be answered at the end. But before, I have one more question to each of our speakers, and to Paula now. Paula, what will be some of the challenges in Brazil and other countries in the work ahead in addressing high rates of domestic violence? And what are some lessons learned from the pandemic?
Thank you, Roberta. And one, I'll just say that I think you've shared some great experiences so far and very, very important already things to think about and experiences. One thing I'll start by saying on your question, in response to your question, is that I think we've realized by now that the public health situation and the economic impacts of the pandemic may remain longer than we originally hoped for. And with this, probably some of the responses also will have to remain and be expanded, be increased. In terms of just the numbers, one estimate is that for every 3 months of confinement because of COVID, an estimated 15 million more people will suffer from gender-based violence around the world. So the numbers are very, very high because of the situation. And these are estimates we don't really know. I know that, underreporting for gender-based violence is already large, especially in these contexts. So some of the challenges will continue, as well as others that we'll still, I think, learn about. But some lessons are helpful already. One key avenue, as we've seen, is technology. I agree with that. That's been also what we've seen from some of the work that we've been doing, is that the responses that have been helpful in adjusting to respond to at least increase access for women to services, to reporting, to complaining, to getting help, have been through this virtual format. So that's excellent. But we also need to account for not just the online violence, which is very serious, but also the fact that women generally have much less access to technology and technology-based solutions. So that's information, service provision, everything. We know, for example, that in low and middle income countries, over 300 million fewer women than men use mobile internet, and that globally the gap is about 17%. So that's huge. And we need to take that into account, even when thinking about these responses and understanding that a lot of women might not be helped by some of the technology. And there are also vulnerable groups that need to be taken into account specifically. So we have the racial divide in many countries. In most countries, in Brazil, that's definitely the case. And domestic workers, migrant workers, older women, a lot of other specific needs that need to be thought about. And so one thing that I wanted to mention is beyond the technology, which we already know, and I agree is a key element of responding, especially in these contexts and going forward, is also making sure that women have access to technology. Some measures are already being implemented in this sense to make sure that new programs and new basically technology-based services have the reach that they're intended to have and can reach more women. So that's one thing. But also in terms of general response to gender-based violence, adjusting existing systems in general as we're seeing, right? So technology, but others to the realities, making sure that gender-based violences in these contexts, but also as needed, are designated essential so that they're kept open, so that they continue to function, so that women continue to have access. Another important aspect is just safety nets for women, right? And that's looking at the economic aspect and understanding that women many times cannot leave abusive relationships because of financial constraints. And so making sure that women have the financial means to leave abusive relationships and then can have the access. Making sure that women in general are involved in the decision-making process, are involved in developing the response systems, because they also better understand many times what the specific issues are. So some of these I think are very, very important. Data collection, making sure that we have adequate data to know what we need to do, right, in our responses. And then communication, access to information. Like Renata said, and I think we've all said, a lot of this is making sure that women know about these services, that women can access the information and access the services. I think these are some of the kind of overall elements that need to be combined with the technology-based responses to make sure that really women can access these.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Paula. Now I want to turn again to Anne, and also thinking of the work ahead and what will be the next steps for Justiceiras.
Justiceiras is an interesting moment. Now we are moving to a new platform, and this platform have more technology to giving for volunteers more intersectionality. So we can connect with each others in the same time. So it is easy way. But like a new challenge is, I forgot to say, to materialize our assistance, Justiceiras identify national leaders, but to materialize this assistance, we identify local leaders in community. Brazil is a big country, so we have 26 states. So we need this support. We need this capillarity in the Justiceiras to materialize the assistance. So now we have international assistance too. Until now, we are in 10 countries. They are England, China, Venezuela, Singapore, Japan, Mexico, Italy, Canada, Colombia, and Brazil. But what we observed until now, we have a lot of Brazilian women that need our help around the world. They need the information, like Renata said, like Paula said, information about what are the options, what are the ways, and give this information for them is give a power to decision. Give this connect with other organizations like I forgot consulate, and other organizations could help them to change their lives. So it's the big challenge to Justiceiras for us is identify a new international leaders to help them and share our WhatsApp number who needs about our help.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, Anne. And I have one question to Renata. In this context as well, and from your experience, what could be done to expand guidance and care for victims of domestic violence?
And I will repeat something that Paula said, that domestic violence against the women is also a pandemic. And it is interesting to realize that because it requires efforts from all of us, so civil societies, government, and companies, to combat the violence against the women. And I will talk about companies, to what companies can do to help to solve this problem. Last year, we as a team, we actually every day we read research and study about domestic violence and numbers, data, and we one came across us. I studied from Maria da Penha Institute, the NGO from the women who carries the name of the law against the domestic violence in Brazil, the Maria da Penha's law. And this study discovered that women who suffer domestic violence and work missed an average 18 work days per year, consequently generating income loss and possibly leading to get fired. This also generates an impact of 1 billion reais in our country economies. So, besides personal damages the victims are suffer, there is also an impact in the country economy. And with this information, we create another platform called TINA to work with companies in which female employees receive support from psychologists and social workers from my team, the Mete Colher team, to orient and guide the female employees in the best way possible to leave the situation of violence. During the pandemic, we realized that there was an increase in reports on TINA from the workers of the company we work with. And there was also an increase of companies looking to hire our service. This part for us was really good because prove that our idea have companies that want to work like this. Because since the pandemic started, all employers are working from home, which widened the chance to suffer domestic violence. It's important to say, I think, that violence is always going to be a part of the women's life, and unfortunately, be they employed or not. And having platform like Tina, I think, can help those female employees who already have access to income. Is important because set them free of violence. It gives a chance to maintain they in the labor market, and then they have more possibilities of professional growth, which consequently will improve the country economies. And again, I think not this solution will solve all the problem, but I think it's a piece of problem that we can help to solve and improve the women's lives.
Okay. Thanks again, Renata. And as we know, as Brazilians, 1 in 4 people in our country still don't have access to the internet. So I want to ask Viviana, what could be done to reach and support women experiencing violence and who have no internet connection?
It's a great question, because even though we are here in this panel discussing internet, we must make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind. That being one of the core components of the SDG agenda, and it requires a commitment from all of us, to all women and girls, including those who do not have access to internet. Holding on one hand the reality of a large number of women who are not able to access internet, and on the other hand, the commitment of not leaving anyone behind. Plan International here in Brazil is exploring new initiatives that actually are not new, because we are talking about radio, short messages. We are committed with the production of radio content, for example, because in the rural areas, women do not have internet access or cell phone, but they still have access to radio, and they enjoy listening to radio shows. During the pandemic, we are working in a campaign called Quarantine Yes, Violence No. Violence against women is still a reality that actually got exacerbated for many women, and the violence must stop. We are now walking to the next step in this campaign, because here in Brazil, we are living this moment that at the same time, more than 1,000 people died yesterday. At the same time, we are opening the society, and we are telling that quarantine is not an option anymore, but violence, we must fight against violence. We are trying to say that pandemic, it is still a reality, but violence must stop. Because as my colleagues told before me, here in Brazil and in the entire world, another pandemic is the violence, the increase of the violence against girls and women in the entire world. So we are also developing several projects on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp groups to reach those with internet access. But we are also sending all the tools we are creating to the inner cities and rural areas so that people can adjust it to their own realities. We are making open resource because we are sharing with all of them who want to make some change in women and girls' realities. We also developed actions in first response, providing food, water, hand sanitizers to families in vulnerability. And we are also creating alternative ways to enable people to connect with help when they feel unsafe and when they need protection. So we are also still focused on sexual education and family planning, sharing information about methods, contraceptive methods, sexual health, among other things. And we are not only making this process on online ways. We are trying to find a way to address information to all of women and girls. So we really want to develop a new approach, and we are investing in research and in putting things into practice, figuring out ways to do it. So our challenge right now is what we can do, what's next. We are really producing all of our contents in radio. We are also producing our information in small notes for people. But what's the next? We have a lot of small cities, and people read magazines there. In urban areas here in Brazil, it's a common way to communicate when people have a magazine from this community. They can talk about the shops, they can talk about the neighborhood, and we are trying to make some statements in these magazines. We are trying to find a way to involve people who are in the streets, for example, trying to work with the professionals of healthcare who can be in touch with the population and in touch with women and girls, and trying to share with them some messages that they can talk with women and girls. We are trying to see how we can connect women and girls with these persons that they are already talking, and then trying to improve this conversation in terms of safety, in terms of fight against violence. So we don't have all the answers, but we are trying, and we are trying really hard. And my invitation is that we need to think more. And it's not to think without technology. It's not to think about digital ways to do things, but how we can ensure that people that right now are accessing this technology can really receive the results that this technology can produce in our world. So how we can use these technologies to find a way to communicate with everyone. I think it's our challenge right now, because we really must leave no one behind.
Thanks again, Viviana. So we have like 7 more minutes. Time flies. And we have received many questions from our audience here. Let me see here. The first one will be to all of you. They are asking about initiatives to men and boys to address violence related to issues during COVID-19, and also to girls. Now, with technology, do you believe that younger girls will be able to call for help even earlier and break this continued violence? So we can talk about men and girls.
I'd like to share other initiative of the Justiceiras, is the Justiceiros. We started with this second project, I think 1 month ago, And what is it? It's the opportunity to men deconstruct the mentality. So toxic masculinity. So this is a place to share experience in discussing that. So Justiceiras started with this proposal. It's not to care about the aggressor, okay? Is to change the mentality of community. And it's an opportunity to give to opportunity to discussing that in community with us about culture, change this culture that Viviana said. How it's happening? How we until now we need to say it's wrong. Some things, basic things, are wrong. How? And I think Justiceiro is a new opportunity to discuss in that. And we give this product for these companies, discussing this in the company. So it's a new opportunity to real change the culture.
Please.
I think it's better Vivian say something. I think about the last question.
So it's just a comment. I think we need to understand that to talk about violence against women, it's not only about women. So when we are right now trying to say that as women we have the right to live without violence, we are talking about men too. So it's about, we need to address what's the men's responsibility in this process. It's about to create a new space for men to share their experience, as Anne said, but also to make a new commitment. And it's about start this process with boys, because we are still socializing boy to be a huge and a really important man who really acts with violence against women. So since the beginning of boy lives, we are trying to teach them that they need to be strong, don't be a girl, don't be a pussy, and it's wrong. So here in Plan International, we are developing a curriculum which is Champions of Change, and we are working with boys and girls. Girls are really learning about how they can live a life without violence, how they can connect with their power, but with boys, how we can engage boys in gender equality, how these boys can learn about power, but about share, but about respect, and how these boys can learn about consentment. So I think it's a great initiative to boys and youth, and I invite all of you to learn more about Champions of Change curriculum.
And just talking about the last question is faster. I think younger girls is heavy user on the internet and mainly in social network as Instagram. In our Instagram, the Mete Colher Instagram, we have our audience is between 16 years and 25 years. And, sometimes these girls are in the first relationship and we can help them during the beginning of the life of the relationship with other guy or other boy or girl, and I think the girls are really well know about the platform, the technologies to have support.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of questions here, but unfortunately, we don't have more time. I'd like to say thank you to our panelists, Paula Tavares and Willians. Renata, Albertin, and Viviana, Santiago. Thank you for all the good ideas and inspiration. And I want to say that we are very, very, very happy to be here today with our panel at RightsCon. And yes, the most important thing to remember is that even this discussion is over now and here, hard work continues. As we all know, this is a critical moment and we need to embrace these issues. So we need to come together to change this reality. Thank you for all who join us today. Be safe, everyone. I hope to see you next year in RightsCon, right? Bye-bye.